another edition of Trinity Radio. I'm Jonathan Pritchett, and along with me is
Braxton Hunter. And before you say anything else,
Yeah.
Jonathan, somebody type a Y to let us know that we are being seen and heard, because we had a little bit of last-minute mic issues. As you can see, we are fortunate enough, because of one of our patrons, to have two Shure SM7B top shelf mics, but for some reason
one's not working.
So here we are using the same mic. So I want to make sure that we can be heard somewhat well. So somebody just type a Y and let us know. And I don't see anyone typing anything yet, but maybe there's a bit of a delay. All right. So Shannon Cube says that, okay, why they can hear us and see us. Shannon Q says, I have money on 1.75 hours. Don't let me down. You're going to be let down. Pritchett, I didn't tell you this ahead of time, but we need to plan to spend no more than 5 minutes on each of these atheists.
Right. So we're going to go 1.74.
Yeah.
And let her down, man. That's terrible.
All right. So glad you guys are all here. Thanks for showing up. Pritchett, any other introductory remarks? You haven't been on in a couple of videos. So.
Yeah, I'm glad to be in here.
Yeah,
finally.
In the office.
Yeah, I've been doing these things sitting on the floor at my house, with in the Trinity Radio, the old Trinity Radio studio, we have these stools, and I had my phone up on the stool, and I was sitting on the floor with the stool holding up my phone against my dresser.
Yeah.
The side of my dresser.
Yes, we all know.
Yeah,
we could all see that.
Yeah, so I'm glad to be sitting in a chair with better posture than
Godless Engineer saw his picture in the thumbnail and has turned up to say that we're not social distancing. We don't even social distance where we live. We live like right on top of each other on Google Maps.
Yeah,
All right. So thank you guys for being here, especially those of you atheists who've shown up. I want to say from the beginning that to anyone who is a first-time listener to our show, though we get snarky sometimes, particularly my beautiful, thin, muscular co-host, Jonathan Pritchett, the reality is that we love atheists, we love Muslims, we love Hindus, but primarily on this show, we focus on atheists, at least we have for the past year or so.
I wonder if they're here because they saw their faces on the picture, the atheists.
That's what I said,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but content creators are narcissistic, just like us.
Yeah.
So that can happen. But I want to be clear here that though we may say some things, Godless Engineer, I'm looking at you, kid, and others, we may say some things that may not sound too complimentary at times. That's not our goal. We want to be kind and friendly, and the things that we say, we want you to know that regardless of whether you agree with the underlying reasons why we feel the way we do about this, we love you and we care about you. And if you're a listener, we're glad you're here. Even the angriest and most vicious of commenters, we care about and God loves. So with that, let's jump in. So what we're going to do here is, Jonathan, this is actually your idea. Do you want to say why you came up with this idea and how I augmented it?
I came up with this idea because we were talking about what we're going to do for a show, and I had no other idea other than, well, let's talk about YouTube atheist content and what the best way is for what to make of them, kind of. Just in generally.
Yeah. And then I said, well, you know what we really could do is I think that the church doesn't really understand YouTube, generally speaking.
Yeah.
Our pastor went to a conference not too long ago and said that the fact is every church ought to have a studio of some sort to make internet content. And so as a result, what I wanted to use this video for is kind of also to speak to our audience and to perhaps the atheists there that might take our thoughts seriously, but also to have a video to recommend to pastors, youth pastors, parents, and others to kind of explain what the field is on YouTube, what's out there, and how atheists are functioning in different ways.
Yeah, you say that about pastors, and that is never been more obvious than now that they've had to become YouTube evangelists as well as pastors, trying to broadcast their sermons during the quarantine. And some of them are obviously more adept than others, and a lot of them aren't. This was entirely new for the pastors, trying to be doing their sermons online for those who are stuck at home. So
yeah, and somebody says that our sound is way too low. I turned up the gain a little bit. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Maybe you guys can let us know. Sorry about that. Yeah. All right. So if you can hear us at all, then great. If not, we'll just be talking to ourselves. So let's go ahead and jump right in. The first person that we're going to highlight is a man called Anthony Magnabosco. And Magnum Bosco, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, is one of the well-known street epistemologists. I think he's responsible for popularizing it to the degree that it has been popularized. And it's very much like a skeptic's response to the kind of street preaching. Now, we don't mean like sandwich board type street preaching, but street evangelism that you get from certain individuals. We have a student here, Dylan Simmons, who does a lot of this. And it's kind of like that. Go out, talk to people. And of course, we don't make any bones about, we're trying to convince you that Christianity is true. And because we think it represents the truth about reality, but we're willing to answer questions and explore those ideas with you. This is kind of the other side of that. Although Magnum Bosco has said in other videos, I'm just trying to explore why people believe what they believe and see if they have good reasons for believing what they believe. And I think he said when he was on the Atheist Experience with Cosmic Skeptic, he said that the idea is that he doesn't want to give big arguments or anything like that. It's more of a kind of question asking, maybe a Socratic sort of a situation. So let's go ahead and watch a short clip, and it will be short, and then we'll come back.
The idea here with street epistemology, which is what I'm doing, is to take a statement or a view or a belief, something that you think is true, and explore it with you by asking questions.
Okay.
So maybe you think Ojo is real. Ever hear that?
Yes.
Okay. Or gender is a social construct. Vaccines cause autism.
That's not true.
Karma, gods. We take something that you think is true and explore it together. Figure it out. Like, what exactly are we talking about? Why do you think it's true? How did you conclude that those are good reasons for thinking that it's true? Does that sound like something interesting to do?
It sounds interesting. I'm kind of curious. I'm like, I'm also a little nervous.
Yeah, so first thing to note is that when you hear people talking about professors like from God's Not Dead, obviously one of the finer films ever to be produced, but listen.
Kevin Sorbo, actually, one thing I like about that movie is at my community college, I started my academic career at a community college, by the way. Well, I started my vocational training at a barber college and then went to community college, got an associate, said, that was fun, let's go get a bachelor's. Said, that was fun, go get a master's. That was fun, go get a doctorate. But at the community college I started at, Pulaski Technical College, Lyndall Rowe was my introductory to philosophy professor. And yes, those God's Not Dead, stereotypical, I want to bash Christianity types are
they're out there. I had a professor like that as well. But what
and Lyndall Rowe, if you're watching, I'm glad you got fired because you sexually harassed a student. Okay, next.
All right. Well, I just want to say, for the record, I have no idea what he's talking about and can't endorse the statement. Well, no. I don't want to go into it.
Google Lyndall Rowe and what he said to a student, what he asked a female student in class in front of everybody.
Okay. But what I want to say here is it's not just the professors. It's also people like other students and perhaps people that are doing some street epistemology that might show up and say, hey, why do you believe what you believe? Do you have good reasons to get there? Occasionally, Magnum Bosco will run into someone who is familiar with Christian apologetics and somewhat adept at it. And those are the more interesting conversations to me. But it's just another reason to be, we need more apologetics. We need more exploration of these things in church so that when we get out there, we can at least, I would think the atheists would at least agree. Even if you think we're indoctrinating people and all the rest, the idea is at least then the conversation could be had at a higher level.
Indoctrination never happens on the other side, right?
Yeah.
It's always the religious people. It's not our education systems, public university systems and all that. But
so be aware, we won't spend too much time on Magnum Bosco, except to just say he has popularized what is known as street epistemology.
Yeah.
And be aware that is happening. It's kind of like what? Well,
it's kind of like the Ray Comfort of atheism, right?
Yeah.
So and a lot of it has to do with if you're Googling it, Google Lyndall Rowe, Lyndelroe, Pulaski Technical College. He got fired for asking.
This isn't Maury Povich, man.
Yeah, I know, but still,
it's a worldview show.
Yeah, exactly, and of course, not all atheist, stereotypical professors of intro philosophy classes end up getting fired, but this one did. But yeah, worldview does play a part of that. Because anyway, so it's this question kind of thing, this exploration thing. Ray Comfort does the same thing. He asks people what they believe and why they believe it. Interesting, his sample questions about the vaccine thing. My Facebook feed has been going crazy with the tinfoil people about Bill Gates and vaccines for this and how it's going to depopulate the planet and all that stuff. It drives me nuts. But what he wants to get to is, why do you believe in God? You know, or something like that. Same way Ray Comfort wants to know why people don't respond to Christianity.
And I think the reason it's so popular is because it is an easily reproducible format.
Yeah. Now,
it's not a personality-driven type thing. Anybody could do it.
Yeah.
So.
But one of the things that you would read in like a Greg Koukl's tactic books or something like that is to not always be the one having to answer all the questions, right? Because that will put you on a defensive footing for you to justify every answer that you give. You want to make them have to answer questions too.
All right, so let's move on. And I've raised the audio levels on the video, someone said. And the next is our old friend Pine Creek, who, by the way, as of just about 20 minutes ago, was still doing a video about me.
Yeah.
So
because he loves you, man. Pine Creek loves us. He just he loves me a little bit more.
Particularly you, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the way he says my name can be a little bit creepy, but he is my biggest fan, and I want Pine Creek to know that I appreciate him.
He said I'm under the control of Satan on Twitter, and I was like, well, you're at least like volunteer labor or something.
Right.
Let's go on.
Yeah. Are there any answers out there? Of course, there's answers out there, Tim Barnett. There's answers out there for those doubting Mormons, for the doubting Muslims. There's always answers out there. The Christian has to ask themselves, how do I lower my biases? What's the worst that could happen? How can I look at this without being fearful of my parents being disappointed in me or me going to hell?
Yeah, so there's currently, Jonathan, 14 thumbs up for us and 1 thumbs down for Pine Creek. So just want people to know. But listen,
don't thumbs down, Pine Creek.
So here we go. So Pine Creek was really maybe responsible in part for this being now pretty well an atheist response channel.
Yeah.
And the reason is not because it's all about him, but it was because when I had my debate with Dillahunty a year ago, there were 2 response videos that came out that I became aware of about the same time. One was Doug Pine Creek. His name's Doug. Yeah. And the other one was Godless Engineer, who I think's name is John, but I could be wrong.
You're already being more respectful in this video. You haven't called him Pine Sol or...
Some people thought that was disrespectful, and so I've backed off. But anyway...
this outrage culture. You're being.
So but this is our thing. I'm the straight.
Do you know what people say about us in the comments?
I'm the straight guy. You're the funny guy.
People want. I'm the dumb guy, right? That's fine.
Okay, right. So anyway,
he called me dumb. It's fair game.
So Pine Creek is kind of what he does is he, again, like Magna Bosco, I would call both of these people psychologizers. I have a video, I'll link it later in the show notes, should have already, that breaks down how I categorize these different people. And I think that both of these guys are psychologizers, and by that I mean they're not usually given these big arguments. Pine Creek's famous thing is he comes up with these analogies like, would you believe in a man if I said someone saw a man fly? And this happened 150 years ago. Multiple people, saw a man fly. Yeah. Would you believe? It's supposed to be like a parallel to, would you believe a man raised from the dead, like Jesus?
Right.
And so he does those kinds of things.
Those analogies. So he's the atheist equivalent of Leighton Flowers, then, because Leighton Flowers uses a lot of analogies. And people.
I'd like you to look at the screen and feel your heart warmed. I don't think Pritchett is dumb, Godless Engineer says. So the thing that about Pine Creek is. And this could be controversial, but I'm just going to say it because I think it's true. He, I think, is a smart guy. I think he's probably got a relatively high IQ. That's not the part I meant was controversial, although maybe. What I mean is controversial is I think he takes a lot of the same ideas that come from the atheist comment type stuff. Because, of course, this video that came out today, we were listening to it on the way over here, and he gave voice to some of the very thoughts that are in the atheist comments already on the video. Yeah. And so they're not the sort of, complex sort of responses that you would get from some of the other people we're going to cover in a bit, but he gives voice to it in kind of a reasonable, common sense sort of guy, middle-aged guy sort of way. And obviously you were saying something about how these weren't difficult, the things he was raising.
Right. One of the things that I noticed about when we were listening to it, and of course, every time he'd play you and then he would say something and then we would flippantly shoot it down within 10 words or fewer because it's not really a lot of substance, which surprises me because I think his shows in the past actually had more substance than they've been having lately. So, but the more he leans into the very kind of description that you're giving him now, the less substantive his show has become because it becomes more about anecdotes and analogies and I've heard his responses to you and even in responses to me saying what we know, and you believe that cuz and it's
psychologizing,
right. And
I'm going to tell you why you're thinking the way you are,
right? Because he more than you knows why you think the way you think.
Right.
Yeah.
So
ridiculous.
But now here's the problem for those that may be interested in what's going on with YouTube atheism is the most of the stuff. Like I enjoy listening to a show. One of the reasons I enjoy listening to shows.
Yes, your guilty pleasure, isn't it?
It's my guilty
it's like
pleasure.
Listening to you. No, you actually like it.
I like listening to him because for one thing, I can't believe, and I mean this as respectfully as I can't believe some of the responses. And I'm always tempted every time to make a response video.
Yeah.
And so I have to really resist. But these are not hard things to shoot down. But for somebody who is not aware of some of these apologetic ideas or what skeptics say, like someone who's experiencing doubt and goes to the internet for the first time and ends up somewhere like Pine Creek, they're not at all prepared. They don't, because mockery is a powerful force for convincing people of things. And that's not always a bad thing, by the way. If you think I'm being too critical, David Wood is well known for mockery. The thing is, you need to have some good substance, some good solid material behind the mockery. I'm not sure that happens as much as we would hope. All right, so let's move on. The next one is, hey, it's you, Godless Engineer, and here it goes.
And since the Bible is the holy word of God, it cannot be wrong. Says so in the Bible, by God. So obviously God is all powerful. I mean, just look at Jeremiah 1:27. Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me? No, G-Dog, nothing's too hard for you.
All right.
You know what's great about that is that the impersonation I'm actually from Arkansas, as a lot of our viewers know, and he does a pretty good, Arkansas deacon type voice for Southern Baptists. So props for that one. Yeah, I've met that guy.
Yeah. So
looks pretty close too. You know?
So first of all, as a person from the South, ha 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 ha. Yeah. I mean, you're not. It's not a bad impersonation. Now,
yeah. Is God? Are you Southern?
He is. I know where he lives.
Oh, you know where he lives?
I don't know exactly, but
he is a Southern. Okay, good. Yeah.
So here's the thing.
Well, no wonder he can do it.
Yeah. I mean, he
Yankees don't do it. Yeah, Yankees don't do Southern.
Go to the local
voices.
gas station and you see that sort of
right.
thing. But here's the thing. What I want you to understand about this is I think this is powerful. And the reason that it's powerful, as I said in a previous video, is mockery is a powerful, powerful force for changing people's minds.
Yeah.
And one thing that you said before, now obviously, as Pine Creek said about us, I'm the straight guy, you're the funny guy, you're Jerry Lewis, right?
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, it's because you appreciate the fact that we're always told in Christian apologetics, be winsome, be winsome, be winsome. And you're like, no, be triumphalist, right?
Right, yeah. Here's a little secret for our atheist friends. When you're listening to these apologists talk at like apologetics rallies and conferences and stuff, you'll always hear them say, and it's all in their books, be winsome, and apologetics isn't about winning arguments. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
Well, the Bible says it's about winning
winsome.
arguments.
Yeah.
We tear down arguments,
right.
But we also do want to see people come to faith in Christ. But here's the thing. He's and we're coming to that, Godless Engineer.
Yeah, I don't always mock either.
But here's the thing. He's in the chat for future people watching this. He's arguing to us from the chat like I did on one of his videos. But here's the thing.
Yes, and by the way, for both of y'all, just sit back.
Yeah, enjoy the show. But here's the thing. If you feel like
again, it goes back to what you said, narcissism, and that's what this is.
If you have to hit the keyboard, hit a super chat, man.
Y'all are both keyboard warriors on each other's comments.
But listen,
goodness, you guys need more to do.
Here's what I want you to get here. Here's what I want you to get out of this. That is powerful, and it does move people. Just flatly saying things and saying how absurd things seem to you. that is very powerful. And it happens on both sides, but it happens far more on the atheist side. And frankly, that might be strategically a powerful move. Now, he mentioned he doesn't just mock, and that is true. Godless Engineer has spent a lot of time. I know at one time he was reading John Dominic Crossan. I mentioned something about scholars one time, and he listed out a bunch of scholars. I think he even has an app that he's part of that helps you locate mythicist scholars and things like that.
All three of them.
He does do a lot of reading on these things, and I think there is, and this feels a bit odd because you're in the room, Godless Engineer, but I think there is
I say anything with him here.
I think there's a desire to move more toward that sort of thing in terms not just of what he's actually doing, but in terms of image. And I think that's a difficult thing to do, given that your audience is built on a certain type of approach and personality, and that's going to be a difficult thing. But to this point, what he represents, and I want people watching this in the future, is currently he represents probably more than this. As he said, he's not just this, and I want to be clear that he's not just this, but he is representative of the power of this sort of bombastic language and approach in terms of convincing people.
Yeah, I have a feeling, Godless Engineer, that your mother would not approve of some of the things that come out of you. Or at least your grandmother probably wouldn't. But,
I did not think I'd be talking about Godless Engineer's grandmother.
I know that my mom would just be, I don't say anything untoward at all, and my mom's like, I can't believe you said that. She gets mad at me already. Yeah.
All right, let's go on to Shannon Cube, who's also in the chat today. This is kind of fun with these people.
Whoa. Someone said, I think Pritch was calling Braxton tongue in cheek. No, I wasn't. That was super serious.
I didn't want to hide an intrinsic and integral part of myself anymore because I feared the repercussions that came with those misrepresentations and pronouncements. I didn't want anyone else to have to either.
All right, first of all, Slam RN is absolutely right. Thank you for being here in the chat, Slam RN, and other mods that are here. She says, ring that bell. Please ring that bell and like and sub. Listen.
Okay, what's the...
Hold on. Short commercial here. The fact is, YouTube gave us more tools recently. And one of the tools that has now come to my attention is that we now can look at the comments and we can see who is a subscriber and who is not. And there's a lot of you folks that aren't subscribers. What's going on? Atheist, Christian, Hindu,
if you're going to
Muslim.
say mean things about us, at least give us a sub, if not a sub and a ring. Anyway, let's talk about Shannon Cube.
She says it's a 2-year-old video. Yes. Well, when I first took that clip for another video, it was about a year ago. So
yeah. So what he's saying is production value low, being lazy, grab what he had already on file. Okay.
All right.
That's fine.
Yeah. So anyway,
certainly the nicest YouTube atheist out there, in my estimation, the most nice.
The thing about and even like when she and Paolo Gia did a video about me or in response to me kind of the other day.
Yeah.
She said things like, she'd get onto him for being too snarky or whatever. Yeah. And she'd say, look, Braxton's a nice guy. He sent me and I think I've done this for Shannon and for Godless Engineer. When I have a video response coming out, I send it ahead of time or at least let them know ahead of time. And so they've been cool that way. But here's what I think Shannon does that is strategic and that I want pastors, youth pastors, and people to be aware this sort of thing is out there. And she is, and I have every reason to believe she has the best of intentions with this. She is an advocate. I call this sort of person, and maybe genetically modified skeptic as well, an atheist advocate. And what they do is they serve kind of as counselors. And, like she said in that video, I experienced some bad stuff because of this, and I don't want anyone else to have to be that way either. And so she kind of, opens up to people like that and serves kind of the role of pastoral care, if I dare say, to people that are coming out of theism or out of Christianity. And so what I want to highlight here, and I did in my video, is there is an interconnected, I don't know if it's intentional or not, sort of a system that I think just emerges among these different approaches on YouTube where someone might end up, because of, say, Godless Engineer, seriously doubting. They might go look at some other stuff. They might end up leaving the church or whatever. And then they're disillusioned. And so someone like Shannon Cube's channel comes along and gives them a sense of community, sense of camaraderie. And so I think that there is kind of a relationship there, a strategy that I don't know is intentional, but everyone is filling a role. The point being, if you're out there and you're looking at YouTube atheism and you think, oh, it's just a bunch of griping, complaining, teenage pimple-faced kids, blah, blah, blah. There is some of that, sure, on both sides, but this is much more of a well-orbed sort of an approach, and you need to know that for what you do. So anyway,
speaking of which, are we going to do this for all the Christian YouTube channels out there and say what we think?
We probably should.
Yeah. And I'll be honest about those two. But yeah, there's a place for that, I think. For me, I always think about, we as Christians, we know, especially if you've been in pastoral ministry, what it's like to come from a lifestyle of sin and a lifestyle of rejecting God and rejecting Christ and living for self and all of that. And so we know what it's like to talk through these kind of issues with people who are really struggling with where they came from and what they're into now. And so there's a very powerful connection in that pastoral way, in that counselor type way, that I think is actually, in the one sense, it's very commendable to be there to give that kind of sense of new community when you arrive. But in another sense, it's and forgive me for this, Shannon, but that's the thing I fear worse than like the Godless Engineer, and the more outlandish. The typical stuff that you
there's a Twitter post for you.
Yeah,
Jonathan Pritchett's more scared of Shannon Cube than Godless Engineer.
Absolutely, because there's going to be, if you read Facebook, Christians, atheists, Muslims, whoever, there are trolls everywhere, and there are people who want to do drive-by, social media posts where they just say something horrific and then leave. And I've seen Christians do that kind of thing. That's already out there plenty. And for some people, that's on all sides of this. They're not going to want to, they have no interest in that. That's not what they want to do. But what they are going to do is they are going to want to find something more substantive than somebody who's just keyboarding Sky Daddy all the time. They want something more than that. And so the people who probably have a little bit more sense and a little bit more reason and a little bit better temperament, they're going to go to people like Shannon Cube, and they'll find that you don't have to be that kind of the pimple-faced whatever you were talking about.
But here's the thing that I want to say on this, and I said it in the video where I get categorized, and that is that, yes, I think that each of these atheist YouTubers, though I don't think it's always the case or entirely the case, there is something good. There is a good motivation in the midst of all that's going on, even from a Christian perspective. There is something you're valuing that we also value that is good, like helping people in the midst of psychological turmoil and all these kind of things. Right. But this is where Tim Keller, his approach, I think, comes in. And people didn't like that I said this in the original video, but it was that he says this great. He says, look, these folks they're highlighting something good. But what we as Christians want to affirm is that the fullest, first of all, from whence that comes and the fullest expression of it is found in the Christian worldview.
Right.
And that's why I believe that Shannon's going to become a Christian one of these days. Yeah. And so is Godless Engineer. And Godless Engineer is going to be a loudmouth, let-alone red-faced evangelist. Yeah. And Shannon Cube is going to be
he's going to sound like the guy he parodied.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, truth, goodness, and beauty, all of it belongs to Jesus. So that sort of pastoral, that goodness about wanting to reach out to people and welcome them in the community, that's the Jesus in you, Shannon Q. So you need to repent and believe the gospel.
They're not listening to us anymore. They're having their own arguments in the chat. All right, so let's move on to rationality rules. Stephen Woodford, here we go.
Over the next few weeks, I'm going to respond to some of Dr. William Lane Craig's most popular arguments and assertions, and I'm going to begin with just a few that he's made regarding causation and creation.
All right, so I categorize rationality rules as an evidentialist, along with cosmic skeptic, and by the way, I called Godless Engineer a provocateur evidentialist or an evidentialist provocateur, because like with temperament categories, for those that are familiar, I think that every atheist channel has a primary and a secondary.
Yeah. When I look at this one though, I always think back to the picture of you in high school, because believe it or not, folks, he actually used to have long hair like that.
It was beautiful.
And then he went through his Pine Creek phase, and then now he's at the Bruce Willis phase.
Yeah.
So,
that's right. I lack hair.
Yes.
Yeah. So Rationality Rules has had a debate with Unbelievable's Justin Brierley.
Yeah.
And I have a response video to that on this channel. Here's what I think about Rationality Rules. And this is the kind of a channel.
And that type of evidentialist.
Right, yeah. And of course, we have Cosmic Skeptic we're going to get to in a minute. Yeah. But I do like responding to these guys probably more than most. Because there are certain, first of all, it's more my interest when someone is saying that their goal is to challenge the arguments that Christians raise, or to present an argument in favor of atheism, which I understand that most of the atheist YouTubers, and this is important for people to hear, they don't take the definition of atheism that says, we're maintaining the belief that God does not exist. It's not like an active disbelief. Even though in the comments and the condescension and the mockery, it betrays a little bit of that. At least in the stated belief, it is, we haven't been convinced, we lack a belief, we don't believe, but it doesn't mean we're actively in disbelief. But whenever you have somebody like Rationality Rules, who even taking that approach, which I think is what he holds, challenges the arguments and maybe talks about some of the arguments that atheists will use, I enjoy those, Jonathan, because frankly, that's what I think our audience likes the most. That's what I enjoy doing the most. I enjoy digging into that stuff. But,
well, you are an evidentialist. You're more of a classical apologist, but you use evidences. And Rationality Rules is talking about the very things that you are putting forth in defense of the Christian faith. So obviously for you, and this is for like all the budding apologists out there, this type of YouTube atheist is someone who, he may not buy into your arguments, but he's taking them seriously enough to respond to them. Now, he may not respond to them in a way that flatters the arguments in any sort of way. He may be very dismissive of them, but there's also a turnabout on that, because one of my favorite videos with this was when for a guy whose name was Rationality Rules, when What Do You Mean turned his own trading cards or his own game cards that are all, just lessons in basic logic back on him, and the way it was devastating. But
that was a powerful video.
It was just
that was a powerful video from
What Do You Mean?
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, but the fact that he does address the arguments, whether or not he even thinks they're good ones or not, typically he tries to be very dismissive of them, like there's nothing here. But at least it's close enough to what you're saying that if somebody's out there claiming to take it down, you need to respond to that, which is why I think you gravitate towards that, because you're like, no, you didn't, and here's why.
Right, debunk. Now,
now he's the one who
that debunked.
The Kalam Cosmo,
and I'm sorry,
came nowhere close.
I like Rationality Rules as a person, from what I can tell, and I do think he's a smart guy. But I have to say, the criticisms, particularly of the Kalam cosmological argument, at least a couple of the criticisms are in William Lane Craig's video that he gave at Biola, speech he gave at Biola. Criticism so bad I couldn't have made them up, or something like that. So, and it was as though nobody challenged it this way before. All right, let's see.
All these little pops are going to be on the video.
That's all right. It's got a good echo.
And everyone was griping about my my smoke detector, though.
I don't know if Shannon's mad at me or somebody.
This is more frequent than my smoke detector going off in all of those videos.
All right, let's go on to Genetically Modified Skeptic, and here he is.
For this video, just know that my deconversion was not the result of some emotional crisis, but of careful, rational thought. However, where I found myself socially after that experience was a pretty terrifying place. I didn't know any atheists. Everyone I knew fervently opposed everything I stood for. And until I became willing to be a pariah as an open atheist, I'd be expected to base every facet of my life on something I thought was false. I chose not to come out as an atheist for quite a while, but we'll get to that more in a bit. After getting past the initial shock and terror of being as alone and vulnerable as I was, I began to more closely examine the actual cause of that isolation, and I got angry. I and everyone I knew had been taught all our lives that the people like the person I was in that moment were confused, broken, immoral, and not to be associated with. Now I knew that the basis of that teaching was a lie.
Okay, so again, I would categorize Genetically Modified Skeptic, I think his name's Drew, the same way I would categorize Shannon, largely an activist atheist. You know, there's a guy,
He's the one that
what's the guy's name? Think Club, or is it Think Club? He's a big YouTuber. He's an atheist, but none of the atheist YouTubers like him.
I know the ones that you've shown me before.
He did a response video to me, to that video where I categorized atheists not too long ago. And he was saying, Braxton, here's what you got wrong with this. All of them are all these things. And what's really funny, if he ever sees this, is he said, all of these atheists you're talking about are all of these categories. And he hit play, and I was like, on his video, he hit play, and I was like, now, of course, all of these atheists are all of these things at some level. But, of course, that was the point. Yeah, Think Club. Thanks, Brando. So, but what am I saying here? He's an activist, and all of them are activists in a certain sense. But Drew got into this because about the same time I think, it's been a while since I've heard his deconversion story, but about the time he was beginning to question Christianity, he was questioning the essential oils stuff that was being touted about by one of his family members, I think. And so he kind of likens it to that whole deal. And he's got videos on a lot of different things. When I did a response video to his whole channel, basically, in one video, but it was really his playlist on atheism, which he's changed that. It's not a playlist anymore, but I couldn't find any responses to the arguments. I found 2 responses to theistic arguments, but he brought in Cosmic Skeptic for one and Rationality Rules for another. Yeah. So that's one of the things I point out about an activist atheist might bring in an evidentialist
I actually
atheist.
enjoy as far as just in a sense of finding tolerable his videos more than many of these other ones, and that conversational way that he goes about it, I think, is why he's got a lot of viewers, because it's kind of the yang to the yin of Godless Engineer. And that may have something to do with why he's probably a bigger channel. I don't know, but
yeah. But here's another
I think
thing.
that approach is like with Shannon Cube, is one of the ones that when insofar as I don't think about this stuff as much as you do because you live here. I'm the once a week guy, but of the ones that I've seen,
no, you're more than that.
Yeah, but not lately. I have to work. But of the ones that I've seen, those types, those kind of the conversationalists. It's more the ones that are more disarming, I think, are more effective, especially with the whole former deconversion story, because these testimonies, like we said, the Ray Comfort approach, the out loud preacher type, the antithesis to that, you always find the testimony. You always find these Christian trappings in reverse, like the Bizarro world with these atheists are like, what made Christianity effective? Oh, they give personal testimonies. Oh, they get out loud and obnoxious and yell from the pulpit and all this, and say outlandish things like the King James only fundamentalist types. And so you got the fundamentalist atheists, like Godless Engineer would fall into that category with some of the way he approaches his content. You always find the mirror opposite, the Ray Comfort street questioning and stuff with the epistemology.
And that's really good point.
You always find that they do the same things that Christians do for the opposite.
And that's a really good point for people that are not aware of the mission field that is YouTube. Now, if you atheists in the chat, he's talking about a mission field now. Yeah, we're Christians. Expects us to say Christian stuff.
Well, that's why they even say I'm an evangelist for atheism. Some of them said that kind of stuff. They
have a counterpart to everything we've got.
Yeah, and it's very smart, too, because they're using language that people are comfortable with.
Now, what I want you to see with the Genetically Modified Skeptic here is his story, I think, mirrors a lot of the stuff that we see in the church, where you've got a guy who was in the church. In his fuller explanation, he first began to doubt young earth creationism. So he became like an old earth creationism. But he says, I try to push all my doubts aside. That's a big mistake. Those doubts aren't going to go away. Don't push your doubts aside.
Godless Engineer, how am I fun? Because you preach your YouTube channel content in this very similar fashion. You know, I mean, with all the antics and all of that it reminds me of the independent fundamentalist Baptist preachers who are overly animated and excited and all that. I mean, come on, you get your face, what's up, heathens, and all that other stuff.
Somebody needs to screen capture.
You
Godless
remind me,
Engineer, you need to screen.
In your behavior, you remind me of a fundamentalist preacher. That's what I'm talking about. You have the same kind of showmanship, I guess we could call it, or stage presence, or
he's
whatever.
not talking about your beliefs, man. He's talking about your presentation.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: he's going to take the video of you just doing that just then and use it as the intro to a video critiquing you.
Awesome, do it.
But so anyway,
I'm a narcissist, more me, right?
So anyway, the point I want to make about him is, don't push your doubts aside. Address those within the community of faith. And if you're an atheist, you say why, so you can get further indoctrinated. Well, if you address it within the community of faith, you have a better likelihood of hearing the actual best Christian responses to these things. So, but yeah. So here's a guy, like you say, he is very, he's a nice guy. I'm sure he is a nice guy. Yeah. Shannon tells me he's a nice guy. And he looks wholesome. He and his wife both look very wholesome. People can identify. Well, if a guy like that with that haircut can do this,
he's the Cameron Bertuzzi of atheism, right? With the best hair. He's got the best hair of the atheists.
Man, I wonder what Cameron's going to think about that comment.
No, Cameron's still got the best hair out of everybody.
Yeah.
Period. But
all right. So we've said enough about GMS. We've got several videos on him. And I'm going to have one I think I'm going to come out next week on GMS. All right, so Paolo Gia. Shannon, you can tell Paolo Gia that we covered him. Here is Paolo Gia. This is a little bit lengthier of a clip, but it's not too long, so stick with us.
Welcome to Paolo Gia, where a former Christian takes a look at the claims of Christians. But before we get to that, I wanted to tell you a little bit about me, my journey, my goals for this channel, and why my first focus is creation today and a certain Eric Hovind. Raised in a Christian home, I was a believer and follower of Jesus for over 3 decades. I attended a Bible college and was later active in youth ministry, encouraging hundreds of teens to memorize the Bible as divine words. I believed it. All of it. Despite my vague notions that science and religion had some areas of conflict, I was too busy with career, family, and church activities to investigate such things for myself. But my teachers, pastors, and Christian mentors declared victory with such great confidence. What was the point?
If we were to just look at the evidence, everybody would be a creationist.
That's right.
And that's the truth.
This was their job, and I assumed they'd obviously done their homework on this stuff. I was a busy guy, so I was happy just to sit in a desk or a pew and take their word for it. When science and the Bible clash, the Bible ultimately wins. So they told me, trust us on this. The end. Until one day, I was innocently researching ancient eras for a graphic novel I was writing. For the story, I needed to know the scientific consensus as to when dinosaurs went extinct. 65 million years ago, Google told me. Okay. To appeal to the broadest possible audience, I went with the science in my writing. But I made a mental note to cycle back someday to clear up this cognitive dissonance that was creating.
All right. Sorry, guys. All right. So I think Paolo Gia is an evidentialist activist.
Okay.
I think that he is trying to interact with arguments and stuff. Here's the problem, though. Now, it's a little bit mixed bag with Paolo Gia because he focuses a lot on young earth creationism. And again, I've said this many times. So many people say, well, respond to this person, respond to this person. And if all they're talking about is the evolution, young earth creationism debate, I'm not that interested.
Right.
Because first of all, a lot of the stuff that is on Paolo Gia's channel or Prophet of Zod or some of these other people, that's just about evolution. It's irrelevant to me insofar as evolution being true would not hurt Christianity in the least. I realize that atheists wish it would, and they think they found ways that it would, and most of them trace it back to a particular understanding of original sin among several that are all orthodox. So I get that you want it to. I'm getting a little snarky, aren't I? I get that you want it to, and I get that some Christians think it absolutely is the be-all, end-all. But both sides are wrong about that. So a lot of that stuff I'm just not interested in. Now, he does say a lot He does say a lot about the resurrection, and he has talked about the theistic arguments. One of my early videos was responding to him on the Kalam cosmological argument. But when it comes to the resurrection issues, he has done quite a few videos that deserve to be responded to. And I actually did one of my favorite videos is the one where I made the cartoon Braxton, to put on the thumbnail because he uses a cartoon image of himself. That's responding to him on that. I thought that was pretty interesting.
What I found interesting is the Rhett and Ling thing was almost a plagiarized job of his story because of the same types of issues that they talked about with science and Christianity and all of that stuff. I almost thought that similar aspects is like.
Yeah, and I think, hold on, I think Shannon Cube jumped the gun a little bit because I think she, by her comment, thinks that what I'm saying is that he only focuses on the creationism debate. But remember, I was saying a lot of his stuff is focused on that. But I just said that he focuses on the resurrection stuff and the martyr stuff. That's all wrapped up with the resurrection debate too, and the theistic arguments. But I'm just saying a huge chunk of his channel that's devoted to the young Earth creationism that partly led to his questioning further is not appropriate for my channel. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, it's appropriate, but it's not my thing. I'm not interested in it that much.
They're mostly arguing over hair at this point.
All right, so let's. So
no, Cameron still has better hair than everyone in the chat channel right now,
including Shannon Q.
Yeah.
Wow. That's what your wows should have been saved.
Yeah,
for. But so anyway, so Paolo Gia has been nice with me. I made a video about him that I was talking about. I emailed him back or DM'd him back and forth about it. He got back with me, very nice. So that's important. All right, so let's.
I think he gets a lot of viewers just for the cool little cartoon thing.
Yeah, well, and that is a relevant point to make. That for you church folks out there that think that YouTube, you're underappreciating what's going on YouTube. None less than William Lane Craig did devote 2 episodes, Shannon, at least 1 episode, to responding to Paolo Gia. And I have responded to Paolo Gia.
I mean, if William Lane Craig, he's just Craig, but Braxton has even condescended from his perch.
And apparently, he's debating or has debated Sean McDowell today. It's an interesting day for worldview discussions. All right, let's move on from Paolo Gia, but I just want you to know that sort of content is out there.
Yeah.
Holy Kool-Aid. Now, somebody will have to correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I think I remember I couldn't find the video to figure this out. I think his parents were in ministry or are in ministry or were missionaries or something, and he was raised in another country for part of his youth. I think. I don't know. But let's go to Holy Kool-Aid now.
I began putting out YouTube videos to help myself and others to make sense of difficult issues in a world of manipulation and deception. I finally had a truly independent life of curiosity, discovery, and wonder. And I wanted more than anything to share it. I want you to be free. Whether it's an authoritarian regime, a fundamentalist religious institution, or an abusive partner, cult-like manipulation tactics are all around us. And the only way that we can inoculate ourselves from their control is through free thought and critical thinking, questioning everything. No idea is sacred. No human above questioning. If something is true, it will hold up to scrutiny. But those who deflect or avoid said scrutiny usually have something to hide. And by asking questions, we can free ourselves of superstition, dogma, and psychological control. You can be free. Dare to be curious. And don't drink the Kool-Aid.
Okay, so not sure if he was raised by missionaries. It sounds like Shannon, are you talking about Paolo Gia? Oh, no, Thomas. Yes, they were missionaries and he lived in Russia. Okay, great. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say I've never heard of this channel. I guess just to make the video almost 1.75 hours, I've never heard of this person. So now we're responding to people I don't know. But you hear that a lot. So I can't speak specifically to this, but you hear that a lot about, atheism, we're the bastion of free thinking. No, hardly. We're the bastion of critical thought. And so what I always find it funny that that when it comes to cult-like behavior, the fact that they're worse than the Republican and Democrats with all their talking points on every news station that you go to, they're all saying the same things. That's what you get. There's so much groupthink, and there's so much a lack of critical thought. And the idea that, we're not free thinkers. To be a free thinker, you have to think exactly like that. Those who claim to be free thinkers, sorry, that doesn't wash. But that is a common tactic that you find with a lot of these YouTube atheists, is that, you can have free thought. No, you have to. We'll see when we get to Dillahunty how trapped and small your thought world has to become in order to sustain your atheism. But that is a common tactic that you hear on a lot of these atheist YouTube channels, is how, you can break free and apply critical thinking as if no one else does, and they're actually bad at it. And then you be a free thinker. But David Wood and John McCrae they have some funny videos about the ironically claimed free thought that they all don't have. But it's a common tactic that they use.
Well, first of all, let's be clear that most of your atheist materialists are, and I think they, to be consistent, must be determinists. Yeah. And if you're a determinist and libertarian freedom is not a part of reality, in your opinion, if you're right, then the last thing you are is a free thinker. It's literally impossible for you or anyone else to be a free thinker, because all of your thoughts are determined. Yeah. Secondly, I would say, if the idea is, but we don't have some authoritative church or scripture or whatever that we have to appeal to for these sorts of things, everyone has authorities. Yeah. Whether those authorities are imposed or self-imposed. Whether it is someone who is imposed over you, like some sort of a sovereign that then forces you to do something or whatever, or you've decided about Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example, or Richard Dawkins, or Hitchens, more appropriately probably, that they are you're going to. I just heard Cosmic Skeptic talking on Cameron Bertuzzi's show about how, for a lot of atheists, I don't want to misquote him, and this is a paraphrase, so if I get it wrong, but he's like, he said I'd gotten to the point where I think he said he was almost to the point where, like, if Hitchens said it, you almost just want to take him at his word because you agree with him on so many other things. Yeah. So we all have, but he said he did challenge those thoughts, and he made a video where he disagreed with Hitchens. But the point is, everyone has authorities. What are you talking about? What do you mean? Everyone has authorities, whether they're self-imposed or imposed. So important point to make. So this free thinking business, right? It's not. And do you realize?
But it's a common tactic.
You cannot at the same time say we're the free thinkers and you guys are forced to believe a certain thing, and then talk about all the different branches of Christianity and how they don't agree with each other. Right. Like, do you see the problem with that sort of? All right.
Yeah. Anyway,
let's move on to let's see. That was Holy Kool-Aid. Oh, what about Holy Kool-Aid? So Holy Kool-Aid is important because not only are there parallels in terms of the different types of atheist ministries out there versus Christian ministries, and atheist apologists versus Christian apologists, there's also a parallel in terms of how people come to what their background is. And so you have people like Matt Dillahunty who say, I was training to be in the ministry, and you have people like Holy Kool-Aid who say, I was raised by missionary parents. And I don't mean he says that like I don't believe him. I believe him. So they all have these backgrounds. So when you are approaching people, don't approach. I would think the atheists would appreciate me saying this. Don't approach with this assumed narrative about how and why they got to where they got. And don't have this assumed narrative about their background or how much scripture they know or how much they know about Christian theology. Don't come in with all of that. Now, I'm making a short video for next week about atheists who say that they know more about Christianity than most Christians do. And depending on the atheist, they might. But just as a Christian coming to YouTube, don't assume certain, this whole narrative about someone's life. This guy's raised by missionaries. All right. Let's see here. Next one.
I just finished my first year studying philosophy and theology at Oxford University. Many people have asked what it's like to study theology as an atheist, and it's actually wonderful. I have nothing but appreciation for my excellent tutors. And a modern theology degree is technically a theology and religion degree and is suitably secular in its nature. It feels more like studying religion than studying God. And the degree is broad enough to tailor it to your own interests, such as when I convinced my tutor to let me spend a week with my nose in the novels of Dostoevsky, instead of some dry Russian mysticism that he'd originally intended. But unavoidably, this year I also had to spend a great deal of time reading some of the theological classics.
All right, so got to get my timing better, Pritchett. But so now let me open up on him. Cosmic Skeptic, I think honestly of the atheist YouTubers with which I'm aware, I think this one probably is most likely to become a Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett type, like one of the guys that you're going to hear about.
One of the brights, one of the next generation brights.
Right?
Yeah.
One of like the new atheism. I think if he'd been a certain age, he'd have been in it. Yeah. I mean, he's studying at Oxford. He's studying theology,
which
and
we'll
philosophy.
stop right there, which I very much appreciate. And I have said since we've been doing this that I wish more atheists would get into theology and not just read and repeat what you hear other atheists say about theology, but get a book on Christian theology or read the church fathers or whatever, at least like Augustine or I should say Augustine or Aquinas or something, and do serious business with it. I like that he does that, and then get maybe a modern theology book. I had a conversation with Cameron Bertuzzi about this, that you really should get into that and at least because it helps with doing the internal critiques of the Christian worldview, and it shows that you're actually intellectually curious after all, instead of just spewing the McNuggets of YouTube bumper stickers. But anyway, I appreciate this about him. He's one of the only 2 or 3. Well, I've done 3 response videos: Pine Creek, Godless Engineer, and this one. So y'all are in the privileged few that, when you talk about Braxton condescending himself to actually respond to certain people that William Lane Craig left on the table for, there's only been 3 that I've responded to. So you 3 are extra special, but I appreciate him for actually taking an interest in theology. What that also means, though, is that there is an audience for that, where there are atheists that, not many, but a few, that do take theology serious. And one of the things about that pastors and other ministry types and budding YouTube apologists and so forth should consider is that you better know your stuff too, because there are a dime a dozen for all the atheists who claim that they know the Bible better than most Christians because they can Google the annotated Skeptic's Bible or whatever. But
hold on a second. I got a point about that.
But most don't.
But
there are some who do.
So there are a lot of Christians. There are a lot of Christians who are raised in a particular brand of Christianity, and then as they don't become atheists, but like as they get through higher education and they kind of get some independence and they think for themselves a little more than they did and all that, their theological positions change, and they realize that there are a lot of different doctrinal positions that are all orthodox. It's not like there's this big look. The Orthodox Christian, do your thing. One Bible, 2 Testaments. What
3 creeds,
3 creeds, 4 councils, and the first 5 centuries of the Christian faith. Yeah. They're Orthodox Christianity is Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah.
But there are doctrinal positions that people grow into and change and move. Yeah. That's one of the reasons why to say, I was raised in the church until I was 25 years old, so I know all about Christianity. I've got it all figured out. There are people who've been in the church for 60 years who are tweaking their understandings of things, and a lot of positions that you don't even become aware of until later on in life when you've studied more, read more books. Anyway.
Yeah, but the point is that while most atheists who claim they know the Bible better than most Christians actually don't, I wish theology and biblical literacy was up across the board. There are some like this who do, and they do take the ideas seriously because they're intellectually curious enough to explore them, even at the highest levels of the halls of Oxford.
Yeah, I think that Cosmic Skeptic.
Yeah, but I do appreciate that about them, and so Christian apologists and pastors and youth ministers and all that, you need to make sure that your Christians aren't in the camp who know less than atheists do. Now, the typical atheist won't know any more than your your people in your church, but there are some who will, and no Christian should know less than other atheists, except for, I understand Bart Ehrman's going to know more about the New Testament and its background than an average churchgoer, but for a lot of the atheists out there who do take an interest in theology and do take an interest in actual biblical exegesis, not I'm going to quote a Bible verse and say what I think about it without knowing anything about it, but people who actually, and there are atheists who do understand proper hermeneutics, not many, but there are some who do, and you want to make sure that you know as much or more than these type of atheists, especially the ones who are in the process of getting an education and formal education in areas of theology, because that will only strengthen their internal critiques. And yes, we do, and I think, no, don't say anything. Presuppositionalists do internal critiques of other worldviews better than a lot of other apologetic methodologies. And that's good, too, that we have that in our toolkit. But you still do need to give an answer when people do internal critiques of our worldview and of our theology and of our doctrine and our exegesis of certain passages. That's why we talk about theology, and that's why we have Bible studies on our channel, not just talk about atheism 24/7, because all of it's important.
Right, and we thank you so much, Adam, for that super chat. He says he wants to be a mod. I am happy to make you a mod. Now, I'm not.
Why would you want to work that hard?
Clever enough to figure out how to do it like right now, but I will, after this video is done, make you a mod maybe tonight. But thank you so much for that, Adam. I so appreciate it. You need to check out the True ID YouTube channel and subscribe there, because great stuff and stuff that we don't cover and probably won't cover on Trinity Radio.
Yeah, and I'm going to be on it next week. So that's
awesome.
Yeah.
Great. That's great.
I've got to do better than
I
your
would ask
performance,
Shannon that I would tell Shannon she ought to have you on, except for the fact that I think she only stayed through her and Paolo Gia, and now she's left along with Godless Engineer.
They left after their narcissism. Yeah,
that would demonstrate maybe a certain level. Yeah. All right, so let's see.
And he turned Pine Creek off the second Pine Creek switched to
Sean McDowell. But
it's everywhere.
I want to say about Cosmic Skeptic.
Yeah.
I think this is a guy, frankly, I think some of his biblical knowledge needs to improve, but I do think this guy is aware of the philosophical landscape here. He tries to engage with the arguments. I think he is currently the best among YouTubers, atheist YouTubers who are evidentialists. Now, when I say that, no, she's back. When I say that, I don't mean to be discourteous to anyone else. I just think that I just think that he is. Now, there are other people who might be better atheist evidentialists on YouTube, but among YouTubers, right? That's a different sort of thing.
Right.
All right. So let's go on to a channel that every pastor, youth pastor, parent, friend, Christian ought to know about, the Atheist Experience.
Because you can't know and I can't know. And all I'm saying is I'm not convinced that you're correct, which means of the two of us, I'm the only one that's close to being possibly right.
That is Matt Dillahunty.
The guy that you whooped up on in Waco, Texas, right?
You're talking about the War of Waco?
Yeah, where you just totally
I have the War of Waco.
trounced him.
I have the War of Waco. I have the Battle of Baltimore with Paul Kuber and the Dade County Duel in Miami.
It was funny. We were making the memes of the Sound of Music lady with his face on it with going, I don't know. It's so right.
All right. So,
but it's effective. That's why he has a big audience. It's effective because what he doesn't want to get into arguments because he doesn't have any. He doesn't like to spend too much time critiquing other arguments because every time you get your repost to come back, it gets shredded. So what his ultimate thing is, and this is because he's popular, this method has become popular. I don't know, and because I don't know, and I don't know what it would take for me to ever know, I don't think you can know either. So what?
Quick question here. Let's do a little apologetics.
Because no matter what you say, nothing you say will ever be good enough because he'll say, well, I don't know what it will take, but that's not it. So all it is autobiography. It's not argument, but it's autobiography. And for some people, they think that, oh, that's a good way to not believe in God. Just
Benjamin says, can God allow unlimited evil and still remain good? And since I'm agnostic, will God let me into heaven if I ask? And if he doesn't, does that mean he has limit to his mercy? So let me give a little bit of Christian theology here. The idea is that God is both just and loving. And so because mankind has sinned, and however you shape that up, mankind has sinned and fallen. And as a result of the fact that everyone has and will sin, except Jesus, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Because we sin, we need a Savior. And the just penalty for our sin is separation from God.
Yeah.
The problem is, or the good thing is, that because God loves us, he wants to find a way. I say find a way, he doesn't have to think about it, but he wants to provide a way that he can live with us forever. And there can be a situation of love your neighbor as yourself and love your Lord your God, and yet still remain just, which is tough, right? So the idea is that there is an ultimate everlasting person that pays that everlasting penalty on our behalf because he became a man. So he's paying it on behalf of men, of mankind. He pays that price for mankind, and then God is able to be both loving and just. And if in order for you to take advantage of that, Benjamin, you need to do it the way that God has provided for, so that that justice and that love can both be true in the fullest sense. And the way you do that, of course, is to place your faith in Christ, repent of your sins, turn to Jesus, and that would be the answer to that. Now, as to the question, we'll get there. As to the question of unlimited evil, evil will not persist in an unlimited way. That the end of the story is that God will vanquish evil. So I think those are answers from Christian theology. Hopefully that will.
Matt Jackson.
All right, so Matt Jackson gives us $12. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
What's
so
up,
much.
good people? I'll put that up on the screen. I really appreciate that. And what's this? Super chat, 100 somethings. Is that $100? Surely not. $100 from Solis Craft. Recent revert to the Catholic Church here after 25 years of atheism.
Amen.
Really enjoy your content. Keep up the good work. Thank you so much. I don't know.
Yeah.
It says 100. Got the dollar sign. $100?
Yeah.
$100? Sheesh, man.
Yeah.
I feel like hugging somebody. But social distancing. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And listen, while we are not where you are in terms of Catholicism, our apologetics are going to be very similar in most respects as it relates to atheism.
And I'm the most Catholic-friendly Christian there is. It's not Catholic, so I'm an ecumenical. So
yeah, I mean we have serious.
My standard is 1 Bible, 2 Testaments, 3 creeds, 4 councils, and the consistency of the first 5 centuries.
So we do think that there are serious discussions that need to be had on that issue, but
we ain't ate up about them.
And we have videos on that, and you've probably seen them.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Let's get back to things. We're almost done here with the list. Atheist. So Atheist Experience is a channel that is probably one of the most well-known atheist channels because it has a group of different people that come on there. It's from the atheist community of Austin. And it really is, I think, responsible for Matt Dillahunty. It's his origin story, is the Atheist Experience. And they do real well because they take calls and then they respond to these callers. And so be aware that that's out there, and be aware that if you go on YouTube and type atheist, one of the first things you're going to get is the Atheist Experience.
Yeah, and I think he's probably been a lot more effective than the older not generation, but the 4 horsemen types, the Dawkins and Harris and Hitchens and Dennett, right? I think Dillahunty's been way more effective than those.
I think Dillahunty. I'm going to say it right here. I think that Dillahunty is like Hitchens in many respects and better.
Yeah,
I think that Dillahunty is better than Hitchens,
and he's certainly a lot more effective for the cause of atheism. Because one thing that Dillahunty doesn't get that the 4 horsemen, now 3 with that, is that there are a lot the atheists like Dawkins and Harris and Dennett. Less so with Dennett than Harris and Dawkins, but still to some degree Dennett, just because of all the things that he's got his toes in. in the philosophy and scientific arenas. Dillahunty doesn't get as much criticism from fellow atheists, I don't think, as people like, certainly Dawkins gets the most, and Sam Harris would probably be second, and Dennett gets criticism in academic circles and journals more, but Dillahunty avoids the criticism. So when you Google Dillahunty, you get less home team, intramural squabblings with Dillahunty than you can find relatively easy articles on the internet about why this atheist thinks Sam Harris is wrong and why this atheist thinks Richard Dawkins is way out of his depth and all that kind of stuff. Dillahunty avoids all of that and can still have as big of an audience he has and be more effective because he's not having to deal with, his own people knocking him a few rungs down the ladder. So
yeah.
I think has helped his cause and his audience grow and expand, and his influence in the atheist community expand the way it is because he gets less criticism and critiques from other atheists, unlike those prior atheists who rose to prominence 10, 20 years ago.
Right on. Good commentary there.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, I put it back up on the screen because Matt Jackson's channel is also great, and I think he's going through some things where he's trying to update the channel, and a lot of it's just audio, but it is on YouTube, but then there are some videos. Yeah. But really smart guy. We did a video with him and Adam Coleman, who also gave us a super chat.
Hey, Adam, you're a really smart guy too. He didn't say it, so I'll say it.
You're a really smart guy, Adam. You're really smart.
I mean, probably not as smart as Matt Jackson, but
hey, everyone who thought to turn up to this live stream is really smart.
Yeah.
All right, so appreciate you guys. Now let's finish this. We got 3 more. All right, here's Jacqueline Glenn, been around for a while.
My doubt probably started whenever I was in high school because one of my best friends was gay, and I never in my life, even whenever I was at my most right-wing, most evangelical point, did I ever discriminate against people who were gay, because that was a normal thing to me because my best friend was gay, and whenever people discriminated against him, it did not make sense. So to see other people use the very religion that I held so near and dear to my heart to bash someone that I was also very close to, I just couldn't reconcile that.
Okay, now the reason I highlight this one is because, for one thing, Jacqueline Glenn, I think, has been around a lot longer than some of the atheist YouTubers I've interacted with. Mm-hmm. And she has a lot of really entertaining, well-produced content. She's funny. And she, Jacqueline Glenn, hold on just a second. Before we get into Jacqueline Glenn too much, thank you, Shannon Cube, for the $2 Canadian.
Those aren't worth anything, are they?
I think it's slightly less than American.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, U.S. But still, nonetheless, if somebody gives me a dime, I'm happy.
Right.
So thank you, Shannon.
Is that I had the best? You have pretty good hair, Shannon, but it's just Cameron's is on a whole other level from all of us people. So.
Oh man. Well, all right. So,
but you second best. I'll give you that. But
that's something left to aspire to.
Right.
But so anyway, what am I saying? Who am I talking about?
I mean, if Paolo Gia was here, he would agree with me that Cameron is the best of everybody on YouTube.
That's saying something. So, all right.
His words was on point.
So Jacqueline Glenn. She's not an evidentialist. She's a popularizer of some sort. She's an activist. But the reason I mention her is because, as you hear, at least one of, if not the initial thing that began to really make her question, according to that video, is that she noticed she had problems with the biblical teachings about homosexuality. Yeah. And the reason I point this out is if you're someone who wants to interact and have a ministry on YouTube and respond to YouTubers, or people that are really on here a lot, the reality is that homosexuality, you need to have prepared responses on homosexuality and what you want to say and how you're going to defend what your position is, because I think really that is one of the major motivators. And I understand, I'm going to steel man the atheist here for a second. I think that they would say that's not why she became an atheist, but that is one of the things that initially caused her to question, and then maybe she got into the evidence and all that kind of stuff. Fine, fair enough. But it's such a motivator. that we need to be prepared for that.
Because here are the two options that Christians who are dealing with that same kind of thing that she went through, these are your two options. Liberal Christianity, which if you go to those churches, you'll find that nobody's there but about three or four other people. Liberal Christianity, and then you're like, well, they don't believe any of this stuff either. Or, reject the faith altogether and go to either some sort of paganism or you go to some sort of atheism. Those are your two options. And clearly most people do not choose liberal Christianity. So as much as they try to, I'll just say it, pander to the LGBT community, nobody's buying it, right? It's like, you don't believe that Bible. I don't believe that Bible either because of the way it supposedly handles what my friends and all of this. So they obviously, the YouTube atheists or some sort of paganism probably for the most part is where they end up, because those are the only two options.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
with
the reason these
like
liberal churches are dying is because, frankly, here's where I think the atheists will agree with me. It's like, if I came to believe that the Bible is bunk and this stuff really isn't kind of true,
and you don't believe it's either, but
then I'd be like, well, then why am I bothering?
Yeah, and why are you bothering? Why? Hey,
not just why am I bothering, but now why am I bothering further? Right?
Yeah, and why are these Episcopalians bothering when they don't believe it either? I'm just going to go home. And so that's kind of what happens. I think that what is interesting about her video is the language. Now, she's a lot younger than I am. Just you're sort of younger than I am, but she's way younger than both of us.
Oh, it's technically, objectively the case that I'm younger than you are.
But not as much younger than me than she is.
Oh.
So she's part of a whole other generation. And I've never met a single Christian in her generation anywhere on the planet that I've traveled. And you and I are well-traveled. We've been to a lot of places, been to a lot of churches, and the young kids, I'm sorry, I think words like bashing is a little bit hyperbolic, because I've never met these people who bash gay people in the church. I hear they're everywhere.
I mean, there are those people.
Now, in my generation,
we're not saying there aren't those people.
Yeah,
there are those people.
But I'm saying I see more Christians that age bending over backwards to show that they're not that way than I have ever seen anyone that way. Now, when I was young, I did see a few.
I've seen one.
Yeah, I've seen a few when I was young who, oddly enough, look like Godless Engineer's parody of a fundamentalist preacher, and they dropped the colorful metaphors that you would use for homosexuals all the time, and I don't. They were that way, and they were very disparaging towards the gay community. But I've met no one Shannon Cube's, or not Shannon Cube, but what's her name? Jacqueline Glenn's age in the church that are actually bashing. What we commonly hear from people in her generation is that bashing. What was the other term she used there in that video?
I don't know.
They bashed and they were discriminating. What that means?
Well, discriminate is a very broad word.
Right. When it comes to vegan food or a steak, I discriminate. No to the vegan food. I'm going to eat the steak. So who knows what that means? But what she probably means it in the most harshest way. And bash is self-explanatory. But typically for people that age, they use that language because for them, bashing is you disagree with my opinions, right? And discriminate is you disagree with my opinions.
Well, let's.
And so I want.
You don't think she's old enough to have seen that in large measure in the church,
right? And I don't think that I am either. I've seen very few, and I'm from Arkansas, remember, and I've seen very few. You said you've seen one. Now, I'm pretty sure in prior generation, I mean, think about the movies that we watched, right? They used the FAGGOT word in movies like Bill and Ted's and The Breakfast Club and things like that. And they were never talking about
I'm
gay
actually
people.
glad. I'm going to say this.
They were never talking about gay people. They were always talking about other straight people with those terms, but they meant it in a derogatory way.
I'm actually glad. Yeah. I noticed this some years ago that when I was a kid, we used to use that term, just boys playing, as a word that we use. Yeah. I'm glad that, and it never would have struck me as any. I am glad that now I hear that and I hear profanity. I'm glad, because why Christians got no business
talking like
that, to using a word just to be offensive to someone. That's absurd. But I want to say that while we believe that the Bible is true, we do believe that there are genre, context, things like that we bring to bear on any particular passage.
Yeah.
And we have an episode or two where we talk about what we think about this subject. It's an important discussion. But
you should be able to have that discussion without being accused of being a bigot or a gay basher or whatever. So
I had someone tell me, you did the kindest, most loving job of being a bigot that I've ever heard anyone say. But anyway, let me say this before I forget. It's getting away from us here. So in Durish, I've never tried to pronounce that, but you've shown up a lot in the live stream, and thank you so much.
Wow.
$100. I think that's US, man. Again, thank you so much. Unbelievable. Figured it was Catholic donation day. Keep up the good work, and thanks for getting me into that. We're not Catholic, but we'll take Catholic dollars. Keep up the good work, and thanks for getting me into apologetics field. It's been the most rewarding spiritual time of my life. That really means a lot to me.
Someone had said, was that you? I wonder, someone said earlier they went from atheist to agnostic to theist to Catholic. And I thought that was a very interesting thing. We've actually talked about how evangelicals go to Catholicism, Catholicism goes to evangelicals, and atheists go to Catholicism or Eastern Orthodox or whatever. I think these liturgical things are liturgical traditions are up on the upswing. So very cool. My son, speaking of my son in the chat, he always wants us to go visit different denominations, because we've always gone to Baptist or non-denomination, which is another way of saying Baptist type churches. And my son's always wanting to go see the Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. And I've been to those. He hasn't been to very many different denominations yet. So happy to go visit.
Yeah.
But I do want to get back to
well,
Jacqueline.
Before you get back to anyone, let me say a couple of things, because I'm new to trying to wrangle things in the comments. And it's hard for me to keep track. Like, for example, I know there's an interesting discussion about homosexuality going on, and I can't even go look at it because I'm trying to hold on to these super chats so I can say something about them. I'm not as talented as Shannon Cube and Godless Engineer, these people that do it all the time. So MJ Jackson says, Steve McRae is always critiquing Dillahunty. That's absolutely right. And again, we're in the Steve McRae. Wait, Steve McRae? No, I'm thinking of John McRae. Steve McRae. You're talking about the agnostic Steve McRae. Yeah, okay. He criticized.
Well, that's good. I'd like to see some atheist critique of
Nevertheless, I am wearing John McRae's t-shirt.
Yeah, John McRae.
Okay.
Now there was
another one down here. Let me get these because I really appreciate somebody's thumbings down. You know, I don't know why you guys are thumbing down.
Hey, there's more Canadian monopoly money.
I don't know why you guys are thumbs downing.
Not as rich or generous as the Catholics.
Yeah, Tatiana says not as rich or generous as the Catholics. It's not about that. We're just appreciating.
It's not a competition.
Listen, we don't expect anybody to ever give us anything.
Right.
So when they do, we're just blown away by it. All right.
Thank you.
Nor do we require it. We will still continue to make content.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tatiana.
Elbow bumps.
Also, Tatiana is one of the people that was partially responsible for getting me on David Wood's channel.
Oh, cool.
Appreciate that. So look, we got 53 thumbs up for us, Jonathan, and 2 thumbs down for the atheists that we're critiquing.
Oh, there you go. Is that how that works?
That's how that works.
Okay.
So
no, just say they're thumbing me down. Whenever I'm in the video, your thumb down goes up. So
I don't know.
There's
another one here
right there.
All right, what's the takeaway?
Super chat. What's the takeaway? Have either of you watched Democracy of the Dead? I'm actually reading a book called Theology and the Democracy of the Dead, but I don't think it has anything to do with what you're talking about. 2 Christians who delve into academic philosophical literature. Smart guys need more exposure. Well,
not familiar with it, but we're 2 smart guys that need more exposure.
Sure, but I'll go check that out.
But thank you for the $5.
Yeah, and I'll be able to remember that because I'm reading a book.
All right, I think we're caught up there. Man, okay. Yeah, so let's hit the last. So Jacqueline Glenn.
Yeah, but
Poppy,
very powerful
she's the
exit story for Christianity.
Yeah.
In fact, it's very similar to yours because you got into apologetics because you had a gay friend who started challenging your beliefs. You've told that story on previous episodes.
Yeah.
So that's a very hot button issue, right?
Still a friend.
Yeah.
Still a friend.
Still a friend too. See,
I'm not Catholic.
He doesn't call him a bigot, but YouTube atheist commenters call him a bigot.
Justin Brown, I'm not Catholic, but feeling ecumenical. Happy donation day.
Yeah, we're not Catholic either. We're happy that the Catholics are. Now I'm going to have to Protestant shame you Protestants out there for not. You got to rise to the level of the Catholic.
We're trying to get through this. I know that it's been a long episode. We're about
we're going to get to what she knew it. Shannon
She
Cube
called it. She called it. All right.
So just to jump right in, I'm an atheist, by which I mean I don't
Mhm.
believe there's any reason to believe in the existence of God. Could you tell me what reasons you believe there are? And then I'd like to tell you my position on those reasons, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on my position.
What's interesting to me about T-Jump, we recently did a video on or I did.
I call him T-Slump because, like you, he slouches and has
I'm
poor
not
posture.
slouch. Am I slouching? Is this
Yes.
a slouch? Gosh. T-Jump is,
What he is he's a sophist, okay? And like Plato,
I wouldn't go that far.
And
I wouldn't go that
like
far.
Plato, you should be like Plato. You should dismiss the sophists because they just don't say anything but what comes out of their mouth. That time, they're willing to say anything just to entertain an audience, whether it's complete nonsense or not. And
not my assessment.
This is my assessment. He is, and Miguel Benitez shares that assessment, and several other apologists share that assessment. It's just spewing stuff for the sake of entertainment and ornamental rhetoric, and it's just I'm like Plato. I simply dismiss it.
My position,
and everyone should just dismiss it because it's just a lot of noise.
For those who want to hear my full response on T-Jump, I have a video. But
I should keep interrupting so that you don't have to, because you're going to give it more credibility than it is warranted.
What I want to say is just what he does so that people know. What he does is he has a position that he calls naturalistic pantheism. And what he does is he takes whatever the Christian wants to say in their argument for God. So like if you take the Kalam, spaceless, timeless, non-material, sufficiently powerful, he'll say, yeah, just apply all those things to the naturalistic pantheism. And then whatever you try to say in defense of God by way of this argument, he'll just apply that back on, and he thinks it works as well on naturalism. So some of the better responses to him that I've seen are the ones that
are given by presuppositionalists like
one of them is Eli Ayala did a good job with him where he basically showed that doesn't fly because the natural preconditions for knowledge require God. But I also thought Blake Genta, this is a long ways back, I think, but I thought he did a pretty good job. He just tried to show that with morality,
inspiring philosophy,
you kind of end up having to get to a personality, and that would be the primary distinction.
And Tyler Vela, the guy in the Christian in the clip, he did pretty good too. So
yeah, Tyler did a good job.
See, because what makes it do good is not because T-Jump says anything of substance. Very rarely does he. Now he does on occasion, but not as often as he likes to think he does. But he's actually not even a good sophist, because sophists actually did make some money for their trade.
He's not a sophist.
But yes, he is, because he doesn't believe what he's spewing out. He just spews it out as a way, number one, to entertain, and two, to try to just grasp at whatever straw he can to not have to respond to, with serious criticisms of things that he actually believes. Sophists also spewed things that they didn't believe just for the sake of rhetoric.
Matt Jackson, what are you going to do when your wife finds out how much money you give to Trinity Radio? Oh man, I love you, brother. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, the lazy boy. T-Jump is known for always sitting in this big lazy boy looking thing that kind of looks like the hand of Thanos or something. Is holding him, but
I can't watch much of his videos because I'm just like, this is. And you're like, hey, watch this. Watch what Michael Jones said to him and all. And I'm like,
I don't think I've ever said that. But
yeah, you
I might have
always
said, this is a cool video. Check it out.
Yeah, you always do that. And I check out
some
of them.
I'm shocked to hear myself say this. I think you're being too hard on T-Jump.
No.
All right.
I like T-Jump. I mean, it's nothing personal. I'm just saying he reminds me so much of a sophist who says all kinds of. And I remember our friend Eric Hernandez talked to him, and he made some certain claims. I can't remember where they were, and I was like, did he give a source for that claim? Some idea, some scientific experiment or something? And he said no. I said, find out what that source was, and he came back and said, well, he saw it in a Netflix documentary, and I was like, okay, like I said, sophist. So stuff like that.
So Josh Brown, now I include this one, Josh Bowen. Digital Hammurabi is the channel. And I'm gonna tell you, I include him because he's an academic, and I want people to know that not only, like we've been saying, they have a mirror for every Christian ministry for their atheist ministries. And this is an example of, I don't know if he would call himself an atheist or an agnostic, but he is a very well-versed, well-read, knowledgeable in ancient languages. Had a debate with Michael Brown on Modern Day Debate, I think last year, and very nice guy. Interacted with him a little bit. So what I'm showing you here is not because of what he says, except to just give you a taste of the channel.
Okay, so we've got my whiteboard here like I always do, and we're just going to kind of walk through some of the things that Seyal points out. So he begins talking about the definite article, and as we have all seen 1,000 times, the definite article consists at its, at its core, generally speaking, hey, pathak, doubling dot, or hey, patach, takesh, whatever.
Yeah, so I mean, now here's just from a YouTube standpoint. So what happens is a lot of atheists will have him on their show. I think he's most famously often on Scholar Fiction Show. I think he's been on lots of other shows. The thing about it is, I think that's given him a relatively large YouTube following. He's got something like 14,000 subscribers, which is great. Now, the channel views don't reflect that, and that's not his fault. Let me tell you why I think that is. He has the same problem that we had for a long time, and that is when you try to do something like teach people ancient languages, when you actually try to teach people stuff,
they zone
like
out.
you really, here's my whiteboard, I'm going to teach. That's the stuff I like. I could watch a bunch of his videos, but the people that subbed because they heard you on some other atheist channel and then go to your channel, they'll subscribe, but then are they really wanting to watch that?
Yeah.
Now a lot of them are. So he does have plenty of people that do view, but there's I'm just saying we have that same problem, Josh. We get it. We feel when I released the other day the history of apologetics, and I was going over Anselm and Aquinas and Augustine and all this. And yeah, it didn't get nearly the views that.
Yeah, here's the thing that I appreciate about some of us in this YouTube thing, since compared to a lot of these folks, we're new, and I'm certainly new, and what some of us actually know the arena we're in. Some of us don't quite appreciate the arena we're in. I know that this is fast food rhetoric. This is fast food dialogue. I know what we're doing in YouTube. Josh probably doesn't. He's probably more like Braxton, who doesn't quite get his head around the Godless Engineer knows his arena. Now, unfortunately, he now wants to be taken more to a different level. But the thing is, if there are people out there who will watch someone like this Dr. Josh fellow, and they're going to be your more sophisticated atheists that Christian apologists are. That's the kind that apologists are engaging at the debate stage and engaging in the academic writing and stuff. And they're going to have students in their universities and things like that who are going to be talking to your students in your high schools and college and career classes and things like that for the pastors out there in the church. And so that the people who can actually sit and watch one of his videos for longer than 10 minutes before falling asleep or tuning out to go see what Godless Engineer is yelling about, there is content there that's going to better prepare atheists to argue with Christians than you're going to find at some of these other channels that we've covered. And so like the things with the Oxford one, which one is he that I responded to?
Alex O'Connor and Shannon Cube. This guy's another one that I'd say that I think about more as being effective than some of the other ones that we've talked about today, because what he's going to do is he's going to prepare those who are more interested in learning stuff than they are saying Sky Daddy 20 different times in your comment section. They're going to have something to say that's going to be effective against Christians, and someone like Dr. Josh, he could probably go toe to toe with you at least on some things better than non-academic types. Shannon Q's all about this guy. She's been posting up a storm since we got on Dr. Josh. But listen, if you're an atheist, especially one of the atheist YouTubers, appreciate you guys showing up for this. And I want to say that this is a sampling of the landscape. There's a lot of people that you're like, well, why didn't you include this channel?
Because they're not good enough. That's why. Do better, right? No. Be more relevant. I mean, there were some here that I hadn't even heard of.
There's people that I could have talked about, like Rachel Oates, and there's people I could have talked about, but I just didn't get there.
No, here's the thing. You know more about these people than I do.
Mr. Atheist, the amazing atheist.
The ones that I heard of that we covered, those are the ones that they actually need to, they're the ones that you're going to stumble across first if you're,
just searching.
If you're just searching. So they actually, I think, do. So I was being kind of facetious, but yet these are the ones that I think are going to be the first that you come into contact with if you start researching what YouTube atheism is all about and what everyone is viewing in the conversation back and forth between the atheists and the apologetics communities.
So it's strategic, whether intentionally or not. It's a mirror image of what Christians have in terms of the types of channels that are out there. Sometimes the things you would not think are the most convincing or doubt-inducing, like flat mockery. Yeah. Sometimes even without anything behind it. Sometimes those kind of things are the most effective from the atheist perspective. And on the other hand, you have very nice, sweet, approachable people like Dr. Josh, Genetically Modified Skeptic, Shannon Cube. And so that appeals to a different type of person. So you need to be aware of what's out there. It's not just this sort of ambiguous amalgam of atheists that you think you have in your head. Don't do that. So anyway, listen, we've enjoyed this show. It's been really long. A lot of the super chats today. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And really means a lot. And listen, we're going to be next time, hopefully have our audio straightened out. But thanks for staying with us. We've had fun today. Happy quarantine. Stay safe. Stay corona free. And we'll see you next time on Trinity Radio.